Hi, everyone. So nice to be with you again this month. Let's dive right in. So, I had a different piece planned for this month, but I decided I'm not going to run with that. I'm going to run with what's happening currently in the world, because right now people are hurting, and I would rather just bring resources to that. So, let's dive in. A lot of people are reaching out to me now and talking to me about how they're feeling with the world. They're scared, or they're sad, or they're angry, or they're worried about what's coming next. Will things escalate? How do we deal with this? How do I cope? How do I live in this duality? How do I go to school? How do I send my kids to school? How do I go to work? How do I field these conversations that are uncomfortable? How do I just take a mental health break and not engage in conversations about it and give myself permission? And I want you to hear that right now. You, at any moment in time, can give yourself permission to exit a conversation. You have the absolute right to just step back. What we don't tend to recognize in the moment, because everything happens so fast and our brains are so smart and they're moving and processing data so quickly, is that it stops becoming about the outside condition and it becomes about the decisions we're making in those moments about us. That's when it becomes personal. And we accept or pick up at that moment old trauma that's being reactivated. We pick up that old fear of I'm not safe, or I'm not okay, or people don't like me, or the world is going crazy right in front of my eyes. We stay circling, spiraling in that, not knowing how to get out of that. And then we just draw to us more and more and more like energy conversations. So more people who want to talk about it. And before you know it, we're ruminating on it. We're chewing on it. We're in it. We're activated. And it's okay in those moments to not try to find full resolution for the world. Just you. You can find resolution in those moments just for you. That was something that my hypnotherapy practice has absolutely changed my life in how I navigate myself and my own well-being. When I do this, I mean in alignment, right? All of a sudden I can hold my own center, my center of gravity, my energetic point of gravity on this planet. And so I can learn and practice to be able to be effective in a time of need, right? If we are not actually living in the middle of war zones, but we are affected by them, are we effective picking up our old trauma or beliefs when it becomes personal in that moment to us? How can we be helpful? And I don't mean this to be disrespectful in any way whatsoever. This is just a conversation I'm bringing to try to bring resources so that you can choose. You can slow down and you can choose right now, is this conversation good for me or not good for me? And if it's not good for me right now, I can step back. I can take regular mental health breaks. I can breathe. I can regulate my nervous system and breathe. Science has shown that when we close our eyes and take these deep breaths, we shift from sympathetic stress response into parasympathetic drive. Rest and digest resources. When we close our eyes, it fires off the signal in the nerves that as we're closing the visual cortex, it signals the brain that we're preparing for sleep. And so we start to drop down in brain waves from beta into alpha. Just 3 deep, slow exhalations and closing your eyes can shift your brain state. And then we have the ability to see in our body what we're holding on to in that moment, what fear what tension, what worry, what anger, what feeling we're holding on to. And when we can access that, we can bring the resource to ourselves. I'm safe. I'm okay. I can help through this if I can hold my center, get back to my center. I can tell myself everything's okay. Right now in this moment, I don't have to know the future. I don't have to know every outcome. I can trust right now in my soul's plan for me. I can change my state just right now. I can choose to not watch the news every day. Just get the highlights. I can monitor myself and make choices that allow me to be in a better position to cope. We have really learned culturally that stress is a natural state of being, and it isn't. And we see statistically it isn't because the numbers are on the rise. When I did some research, it showed that 25% of the US population right now has been diagnosed with a mental health disorder. 25%. Now that's only those who have been diagnosed. There's always the population that deals with it on their own, doesn't get resources, doesn't get help, doesn't seek help. So we don't know the numbers if they're not diagnosed. Worldwide, that's 792 million people worldwide. And our most prominent ways of coping are medicating, distracting, and indulging. So right now, as collectively there is stress, there's tension, there's fear, there's worry, I want to really bring the attention to the self, because you can bring resources to you that helps you cope with this. And I'm not speaking to people that are in hot zones right now. That's different. I'm speaking to us that are in our homes and we're watching and we're feeling and we're suffering. But we don't have to suffer. We can be effective through this. And the only way we can be effective is if we learn how to bring resources to our minds, because it is in those moments that we are choosing to pick up what things mean. That is so important. If we can just slow down for a minute before we get into the blaming and before we get into all of the opinioning and before we get into all the finger pointing, and just recognize in those moments, what am I picking up? I'm picking up a belief that my nervous system is having a response to. I am going into a stress response with it. And once I am in a stress response, it's personal to me. That's where we need to investigate. What did I just pick up? What belief am I telling myself about this that is making me feel, and fill in the blank, unsafe, worried, scared, angry, frustrated? And we need to bring resources to that belief right there. And we can do that by recognizing the moment we're feeling something, we take responsibility for what we're feeling. That does not mean we give outside conditions a pass, but it allows us to back up. It allows us to look at everything a little more objectively. There is more than right and wrong. And for us to be of use through these high stress times, we have to be able to maintain our balance, which means we have to take responsibility for what we're feeling and bring resources to bring us back to that center point of gravity. And sometimes that's just as simple as 3 deep, slow exhalations, closing our eyes, dropping down, noticing, locating where we're holding on to that in our body, and allowing that to reveal itself to us. This is where stillness and contemplation are so important. What story am I telling myself in this moment that has my nervous system in this response? So is it the outside condition, or is it the moment you accepted and decided it meant something about you? because that's what we do. That is how our brain is wired. Our subconscious mind takes the stamp, that impression, that memory, because all of our memories are stored in the subconscious mind. So it takes that impression of the time when we experienced heightened emotion, when we were scared, when we got lost coming home from school, when we got scared, when something happened, when somebody bullied us. And we have memories of that. And then when something happens in the world and there's something scary and there is war, and there is bullying, and there's all of this playing out in the news and the journalists, bless them, all of them in all these different parts of the world that are putting themselves in the line of this to report objectively. And we've got all of this coming at us at our nervous system. We're feeling it, but I want to slow down time right there. It is in those moments that we ingest. It goes in when we make an acceptance. Why? Because the subconscious mind has all of the memories, but we have a part of our brain that associates data. And as it's observing the information coming at us, it is then looking for what it can compare it to, because our brain's job is to always keep us safe and move us towards pleasure and away from pain. So it's checking, and then it locks on that time we got bullied, or that time we got lost, or that time we were scared. And now we've got a data match. And now it's personal to us. Now we are responding like it's happening to us. Our nervous system doesn't know the difference. And now we are legitimately in stress. And then we tend to talk about it. We think we're going to help bring resolution to it by talking about it with other people, talking about it with our partners, talking about it with our children, talking about it with our friends. And all we're doing is spiraling that nervous system response. And you know it. How do you know it? Because your sleep is disrupted, because your appetite changes, because your breathing changes, because you're feeling the response of your nervous system going into a stress response, into fight or flight. And when that happens, all of the blood flow moves to the bigger muscles, the arms. The heart pumps to the arms and the legs so that we can fight or we can run. And we can't maintain that all day, every day. And so when you're not in the middle of the conflict and you're trying to hold this duality, you have to learn to find your point of center. You have to drop down when that's active and find it. What's the feeling I'm having? What image comes up? Whose face? Does that go back to dad when you were getting yelled at when you were 5? Does that go back to being relocated and moving to a different school? What does that go back to for you? Because that's what's activated. If we can see in that moment, if each of us on this planet could take responsibility for our own emotions, it could literally change the world. We would never be able to blame anyone else for anything ever again. If we could literally slow down time and see that when someone is saying something that we find offends us, it doesn't mean that what they're saying is okay, but it means that we accepted something, internalized it, and matched it with a belief that we held on to for a long time from an emotionalized incident that we experienced. And in that match, we blame them. And yet we can take responsibility for that and choose not to pick it up. We can choose not to accept it. We can choose what things mean for us and to us. And when we can do that, we then become very powerful. We then become able to sit in the presence of deep suffering. And rather than suffer to and compound the suffering, we can become that beacon. We can become that voice of reason. We can become the person that brings resources. We can be so present that it's not about us. We're able to listen. What are the needs this person in front of me needs right now? What can I do to bring comfort there from this place of centeredness? If we could all learn to step back and see that the moment we go into judgment is the moment we have accepted or decided something. It doesn't mean what's happening is right, but we have to learn to understand what leads to it. And when we bring resources to ourselves, we can bring resources to others. But first, it always comes back to us. And always, when we are in a stress response, we are telling ourselves something that is not in agreement with who we truly are. There's a conflict. Hear the word. When we are in conflict within ourselves, we are, in essence, at war with ourselves. And when we internally are at war with ourselves, we are at war with the world. If we love our mind and our thoughts, we love the world because we project from those beliefs. And if we don't love our mind and we don't love our thoughts, we don't love the world. So there is a lot of unraveling to do. But if we take responsibility for ourselves, we don't have to fall into the coping mechanisms of distracting and indulging and medicating. They're not solutions. We can step out of the duality of there's only right and wrong and it must be my way or their way. We can instead be the people on the planet who can sit in the presence of suffering and bring deep peace, bring deep wisdom and resources, because it's what you know to be true, because you manage your emotions, you manage your mind. If we all took responsibility for the fact that we project what we believe out in front of us and create the evidence, this is how our mind works. Whatever is high priority to us, so those highly emotionalized beliefs that we picked up when we were little, we didn't have an adult rational mind. We couldn't separate ourselves from the incident. And so we took on a belief. I'm not smart enough. Dad wasn't happy with my report card. That means I'm not good enough. No matter what I do, he's never happy. It must be me. Something's wrong with me. And we try to run from that pain. So it's easier then to blame them. Then we have in this duality, we have a bully and a victim. We have this opposing force, and it never ends. Historically, it never ever ends, but it can end with us. First, to not be at war with ourselves, we have to investigate the limiting beliefs that we carry around, because right now what's happening in the world is triggering all of them in everybody. And then we think the solution is going to come from changing the outside condition, which just continues to escalate. But the solution doesn't come from the outside. The solution comes from within. First, you stop being at war with you. You stop carrying the limiting beliefs around that are lies. What if you put down the belief that I'm not safe and I'm not good enough, and instead you picked up, I am more grand than I can imagine. And my life is this journey of exploring that. What if you put down, the world isn't a safe place, and you picked up the community that I create, one connection at a time, is precious and extraordinary. And there are more people doing good in the world than there are bad. There are more people living their lives, caring about themselves, caring about other people, sending that energy out into the world, loving, learning to love who they are. And when we can love ourselves, we can love others. Everything comes back to the self first. And so if you find yourself constantly in stress, you have power over that. You get to decide. You are the one that puts down what it is that you're telling yourself, and recognizing that that's so old. If we could all really see that sometimes it's something that happened 30 years ago and it's still running our life. We just pick it up when something happens in the world. And it's associated with that same feeling. And the moment we identify the feeling, it's personal. We've now accepted this is personal. And then we're in this response. But we can work with that individually. And collectively we change. It's individually. How do we stop judging others? Stop judging ourselves. How do we stop making everything right or wrong? We decide. And everyone has the right to decide for themselves. But if we each, can you imagine a world where we were all just respectful of one another and everyone took responsibility for their emotions? I'm responsible for my emotions. I'm responsible for how I feel. I can shift that and change that. I'm responsible for how I feel. And if I don't feel good, it may be the catalyst in front of me that you said something, but it has nothing to do with you after that. Now it's my responsibility to go see why I picked that up. Where did that come from? Oh, whose face shows up when I close my eyes and I go into my body and I feel that? That's where my work is. And then everyone becomes our teacher. Thank you. Thank you for showing that to me. My soul has a plan for me, and I'm here learning and expanding and growing over my whole lifetime. And I've done so well in all of these areas, but I'm still working on self-love, or I'm still working on feeling safe. I'm still working on that. That's what's showing up. I'm working on that, and I work on that. I own it. I take it. I go into my quiet stillness and I see, that's what I picked up. And I put it down now and I replace it with something else, something that feels good. And when it feels good, it means the subconscious mind is being flooded with these new positive ideas and it's accepting that belief. And as it accepts that belief, we project from that and then we see the world as a safer, better place, happier place. We are our own walking little universes. We create our own world. Our mind creates our own world, how we see it. So it can't just come from the outside in. That just triggers something that's already there. This is not an empty space that it just goes in and goes nowhere. Is that starting to make sense? So we start to look at, what can I do in this moment? And it is okay to take breaks. It is okay to step away. Breathe, drop down, investigate, own it. Be responsible for your own emotional well-being. You decide every minute of every day what things mean for you. What if you decided to be able to hold duality in a way that your nervous system was in agreement with? What if you decided that amongst all of the chaos, you could hold your balance? Because you know what it's like to suffer. And so instead you heal your own suffering. You choose to let go of what happened to you in your past and not let that influence. So you're not creating a future out of your past over and over and over again. Instead, you're present in this moment, feeling that self-love you've been working so hard for. And when you just hold that, you do nothing more than just hold that and live your life one day at a time. That can change the world because of that ripple effect of one person that you help in that moment, and they sleep better that night. And they'll share it with one person, and that person shares it with a person, and before you know it, we're all giving each other resources, not because someone else is responsible for you, but because you are responsible for you. There are enough people in the world that are at war with each other, and they are always at war with themselves first and foremost. It's not possible any other way. But there are so many more that are not. Don't forget that. Connect to that instead. Choose your peace. Choose to be responsible for your emotions. Choose to locate where they originate from. There is a rise of anxiety and depression that have been increasing since the pandemic. But there's also this rise in personal responsibility that's coming as a result of it. We are becoming stronger. We are learning to manage ourselves more. And isn't that valiant? I don't want to glorify it in any way or have it misconstrued, but there is deep value in the personal journey. And so these things have great purpose. But it's overwhelming if you think you're one person that's supposed to change the collective. That is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to be true to yourself, to your nervous system, to your path. And as you do that, that becomes a light in the night that others can follow through and say, how are you doing that? And you can say, well, this is what I do. And then they learn. This is a time of incredible self-awareness, self-responsibility, self-growth, and self-actualization if you choose it. It's a beautiful time to be alive. It's a beautiful time to see that you have much more power than you think you do. And to help change this into the trajectory that we really want to go in. It can't be by pointing fingers. It can't be out there needs to change. That's like saying, I'm going to walk down the street, but everybody out there needs to hold a happy thought for me, and then I can do it. That is not going to ever happen. But there is a beautiful cascading effect when you can hold your own. Holding your point of gravity in duality with the utmost self-love, trust, connection, and beauty. You can be that. You are that. You're innately, naturally that. You're not responsible for anyone else, but you are responsible for how you manage your nervous system. And there are beautiful resources available to you. If I can help you in any way through clinical hypnotherapy with that, I've had a lot of people reaching out to me lately. There is actually, I'll tell you right now, there's a free download on my website, megadamsonhypnotherapy.com. It has been there since the pandemic. It is a free 27-minute audio download for stress. Please, with my compliments, take it, start listening to it 2 times a day. Bring resources to your nervous system. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I wish you peace. I wish you beautiful, beautiful safety, self-love, comfort. These are all available to you. You don't have to have everything worked out, and there is no guilt or shame in taking care of yourself right now. Please do. Thank you, and I'll see you next month. Bye for now.